Commissioners meeting. We have a jam-packed agenda this morning. We're very excited. Lots of dignitaries and special guests here for various reasons. And we have our newly appointed executive director in the audience today. Welcome, Laura Schlesser. We have to start with a legal notice. As information for our audience, if you're not satisfied with the decision made by the Metropolitan Board of Fair Commissioners today, you may appeal the decision by petitioning for a writ of cert with the Davidson County Chancery or Circuit Court. Your appeal must be filed within 60 days of date of entry of the board's decision. To ensure that your appeal is filed in a timely manner, that all procedural requirements have been met, please be advised that you should contact your own independent legal counsel. So the meeting is called to order. We need to look at our minutes from the last meeting, which have been circulated. That was the July 12th, 2016 meeting. 3 pages of minutes. Anybody have any observations, comments, questions, suggestions on those?
Approve.
Any discussion? We're ready for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Minutes are approved as presented by Christy. Thank you. All right, and public comment time. We start most every meeting with public comment time. Anybody that wishes to comment at this time can step forward. Ask that you identify yourself, name and address, please, and limit your comments to 3 minutes, if you would. Is there anybody that has comments at this point? If not, we will move straight to our monthly reports, and we start with a financial report. Mr. Doug Peters.
Good morning. Right now you have a BFC financial package in your folder. If you'll take that out. The only thing I'm going to discuss today is page 2. So page 2, you'll be able to see it looks like this. Okay. We lost $321,173 over the last fiscal year. That's net income. But as compared to budget, we only lost $98. So we were doing very well as far as budget is concerned, but we still have depreciation and payroll accruals and asset transfers that weren't a part of the budget. So I had to take those out. So that's all I have for today. So if you have any questions, I'll be happy to get with you later.
We lost $98. Okay.
Budget-wise.
Good job.
So in terms of fiscal, actually money-wise,
It's 321.
does that mean we have to take out of reserves or?
321,000.
Okay, and what does that leave us in reserves?
Around 350,000.
Okay.
I think the board will
Saying that
recall
off-
the flea market was the main reason.
I'm saying that off the top of my head, so it's
Yeah,
around
yeah.
that area. Okay, it's approximately that amount.
Blizzard that
And
shut it down for the first time in history.
January's blizzard did not help us.
Okay.
That's all I have. If you have any questions right now, Mr. Sanders should be able to help you with them.
Thank you. Thank you, Doug. All right, we'll move on to Mr. Sanders' report, Executive Director's report.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to cover it quickly because we do have a long agenda. The flea market in July was a smashing success, huge attendance. And then some of you this past weekend, we've had really some good events this summer. Some of you were here Saturday, and we had the Jurassic Dinosaur show that was incredible. We've been trying to land that one for a long time, and Mr. Burton was able to get those folks on board, and we appreciate that and hope it'll turn into an annual event. Some of you were here, the mayor and various folks were here Saturday. They saw the races, wrestling and everything, so I think, I hope all of you that were here had a good time, even though we had a rain out. The September meeting site, I just wanted to bring that up. So as we thought about the September meeting, we can either have it in our old boardroom, or I can see if the 50 Forward Center would let us use it, but we need to decide so we can make arrangements. This will be the headquarters for the fair, which is the next big event coming up, and Mr. Jones will make some comments about the country ham breakfast and the opening ceremonies that the board members need to, I hope, be a part of. You've already recognized
If we
my
can
new
go
boss.
if we could go across the street, that would be great.
All right, I will check with them. All right, I thought you had. The last thing was brought up at the last meeting, it's not an agenda item, just to bring you up to speed, was about the fair license plates. And we do have a website, and it's been up for quite a while, and we have no request for a license plate. So not sure where it's going to go. You have to have at least 1,000 people to even do it. So I can bring some more information about it next meeting if that's desired, but it appears like there's not a lot of interest so far. Give you a heads up on that. So you've already got the 50 Forward. All right, she's already made the arrangements, and now that y'all have verified that, that's where the meeting will be. For the benefit of the audience, that's right across the street, the 50 Forward Center, and we'll put some signs up next month. Chairman, unless you have some other, I had a few other things, but it'll wait. I wanted to make it short because of the numerous presentations today.
Good morning. Okay, on the agenda is old business, other events, RFP, RFI. Should we cover that?
Yes, sir. In your packet, the RFI, it looks like this.
We're gonna enable everything.
Bonda Johnson and I worked on this language. It's been sent to procurement. I see Mr. Gossage is here. Talked to Rick Brown yesterday. I think it's being reviewed in procurement right now. Don't want to put words in his mouth, but I think it's essentially ready to go with the addition of the boilerplate items. Is that correct, Jeff? So unless the board has some extra comments on the language here, that's what will be going out. Language that I'm referring to, it says it's in blue. I really don't need a motion because you'd already made a motion about it. Just a double check because it is an important document. Appreciate Bonda working with me on that. Unless the board has any.
The only thing I would suggest is maybe, if you guys are okay with us separating into an extra bullet point, you've got cultural, artisan, and music festivals. I think that could stand on its own, and the equestrian and other animal shows could
All right, so
stand
you'd
on
like us to
cultural.
just bullet those? All right, good point.
I guess my question would be for Commissioner Johnson is, do you feel after looking at all this and from your, real job at CVB, if this type of stuff will catch the, RFPs and catch the promoters that are, book these type of things from, I don't know if it's whether it's an RFP tracking system that's out there, electronic system, or just whatever it be to catch their interest. Do you feel like this is good for that?
I think so, and I think with the evaluation and site improvement study report we're going to get today, there will be some news out about what's, the momentum out here, and so, yeah.
I guess we could also do a press release or something about this too, to get in. Cool.
I think there'll be, as she's alluding to, I think there'll be some synergy
Oh,
when
yeah.
this gets released with this report too.
Perfect.
So I think the timing is very good.
All right. Any further questions or comments?
Why, Mr. Guy, I'll get the new bullet points to your staff today, sir.
All right, so we have new business, racetrack insurance. Mr. Cobb.
Hello, I'm B.C. Cobb. I'm the Insurance Division Manager for Metro. And my understanding is that you wanted some information on the racetrack insurance. According to the certificate of insurance that they've provided, it looks like we require $5 million worth of coverage for the general liability and the automobile liability. The automobile liability coverage that's provided, it does meet the $5 million requirement by way that they've added a umbrella policy to the $1 million policy that they've already presented. The $5 million does cover non-owned and hired automobiles. Non-owned and hired automobiles are automobiles that they may not own, but they may have rented or leased to use in their business. And non-owned vehicles are vehicles that are not owned by the actual contractor, but they're owned by other persons that use it, i.e. the cars that are on the racetrack. So the policy does require, cover $5 million worth of liability coverage for that. If you have any questions about that policy, I'd be happy to try to answer them.
I have a question about the policy. I didn't know if you've seen, there was a New York Times article in the last 60 days about dangers of short track insurance. It kind of raised a lot of eyebrows. I know we just had our insurance company come and do a site evaluation to help dovetail into this, the new vendor, racing vendor RFP, and I just didn't know from looking at that, if you saw that story or if you have any
I have not
comments.
seen the story.
Or Christie sends that to him, just make sure from your perspective and your responsibilities that we're doing everything we need to do to make sure we're covered, and more importantly, our vendors and our insurance company is too.
Yeah, I think we're adequately covered with the $5 million. The risk is obviously somewhat high, but they provide $5 million worth of coverage, which covers anything that happens on the track with regards to vehicles or general liability as well.
What about a car going into the stands?
That's under the automobile. If it's a non-owner hired automobile, then it's covered under that policy.
Who are servers are covered, is that an occurrence policy, or do each individual person has up to $5 million?
Well, that is the per occurrence and the aggregate limit. So therefore, if you had two accidents that were $5 million apiece, then obviously you're out of coverage because the aggregate limit is $5 million as well.
God forbid something horrible happened, because we don't have, we have not looked at the fencing arrangement and everything that needs to be up to date, and we've had a lot of concerns about it. I don't know if we have some sort of insurance person to look at that and make sure that we are putting all the safety features up that we need, but is there somebody who does that?
Kinda. Is this the right time to talk about it? I didn't know if it was another.
Yes, I
section.
think it is because Caleb arranged for the, actually the underwriter to come out.
Yeah, I'll give you a little color
He
on
was
that.
in the area actually doing a lot of tracks in the
Yeah,
southeast.
and David May, I saw Tony walk in, they may can comment on it too, but from your last conversations, Kenny, we were, in our discussions of the board, we were trying to figure out a way to get some estimates or, have some professional people tell us what safety items may be needed as part of the new RFP. And, that we were talking about the engineering firm, that was going to be pricing this, that, and other. So our insurance company, or I guess it's really Tony's insurance company, has that in-house. So they came out, met with David and a few others 60 days or so ago, and they actually just emailed us last week or yesterday, or I think actually yesterday, it looks like, with just kind of some bullet points of things they recommend that we probably should include in the RP, I'm assuming. But I think they're going to be, correct me if I'm wrong, Christie, they're going to be emailing us a formal one. They
There
just
will
want to
be,
get us something by the board.
The reason he sent it this way, he's waiting for actually the company to prepare a formal
Yeah,
response.
yeah.
So he did us the courtesy because of the meeting today with this
Yeah.
email.
So these are people that they're kind of the only game in town, really, in terms of my research. Not just our insurance company, but they do hundreds of these, and so so they're well qualified to determine, safety items, and so hopefully we'll get some information on that and make sure we include that in the new racetrack RFP.
Rob, I'll send that to you. We just got it yesterday, so we'll send it to you today. Yes.
So, I don't know if we can ask him, do we know about some sort of price tag on these things? I mean, it's so soon and recent, and I know we were trying to talk to some of Metro's current contractors to get just some estimates on lights and.
He has not seen this yet. When
need
David
Mr.
and I
Cobb.
looked at it yesterday afternoon, it's between 5 and 10. We're on a couple of them, 5,000 to 10,000 to fix these.
I asked Christie to email them back and ask if there are costs, estimated cost.
Thank you, Mr. Cobb.
Thank you, Mr. Cobb. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Jeff, I think what Kenny's asking is, as when we had met several weeks ago about trying to get some of our local vendors for certain repair type things to look at it, and I think the only one that really had was fencing, maybe. Appreciate you being here, by the way. After the presentation today, you're going to really get busy out on this stuff.
Okay. We ready to move on?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Caleb. Thank you, everybody. I think we're waiting for some printed material, I've just been told, so
Yeah, we got two more things we can go over.
I think we'd like to skip ahead to the fair update. Scott Jones, please.
Things on the desk, lapel pins for this year. Our coasters designed for this year. We're excited. The state fair, of course, is here, coming up pretty soon, September the 9th through the 18th. We've got a lot of things planned. Coming up, you'll notice next week we'll be going out in the Kroger stores, putting up all the promotional materials in a little over 60 stores promoting the fair throughout Middle Tennessee. So tickets will be on basically on soft sale next week, but then they'll be pretty much live the following week. It takes about 3 or 4 days to get to all those stores and put that out. But we're excited with that. Kroger's, they're a great partner with the fair for us. Also, our school ticket, we wanted to do something like what we used to do back before 2009. Back in 2009 and before, we used to give out over 100,000 school tickets to all the area kids in Davidson County. And since then, we haven't been able to really do that. And with the help of Chairman Ned and Interim Director Mr. Sanders, we've got basically a BOGO, a buy one, get one free kind of thing. Basically, we'll be sending out 100,000 kind of coupons to all the schools, good Monday through Thursday nights, so the kids can come with their parents. So the kid will get free admission with a parent on the Monday through Thursday nights to help those weeknights. But I think it'll be a great promotion for the fair.
Just for everybody's benefit, you might tell them the significance of 2009. Some of them might not have.
Well, in 2009, of course, was the last year that Metro operated the fair. Since then, it's been operated by the TSFA, a nonprofit just created for the sole purpose of producing the 10-day event. And since then, it's just been a little bit of uphill battle for us to get, feet underneath us with all the different promotions that we used to do. And then, the way we're structured now with the fair. So, of course, we're excited about being able to get this program up and going again. And also our field trips this year, we have started a new initiative to reach out to teachers. One is going to be through Facebook. There's over 6,000 teachers are listed in Facebook, so we'll be reaching out with Facebook posts. Normally our high school day on that Monday, we have great attendance, 5,000 to 6,000 kids here competing in FFA and 4-H groups. Our elementary field trips have suffered ever since 2001, or once we had 9/11. Field trips changed. All of that it just changed the way they did field trips. So ultimately, we have struggled on our elementary day, but this year we've so far tentatively surpassed numbers. We've had people start signing up. We just had one school with 320 kids sign up that are coming out for that day. So we're excited about that. I want to apologize. Your ID badges, I was having those at the printers and they didn't get done. So anyway, we will get those in the mail to you this week. So you'll be receiving your ID badges with a list of things that if you'd like to come to. And I'm going to run down just a few real quick. And our chairman, John Rose, just came in. I'll let him speak on a couple of things of coming up. Our opening ceremonies will take place on Friday, September the 9th. Parking will be available at 50 Forward. We'll be running shuttles up to the top of the hill in the Ag Building starting at 6 o'clock for our ice cream social. The mayor has verbally committed to coming to the event, so we're excited about that. Tennessee State Fair race, working with Tony again this year on Saturday, September the 10th. We will be having another fun day of racing. Green flag racing starts at 4 p.m. Our inaugural Bluegrass and Fiddler Jamboree. We used to have the Tennessee State Championships here back in the 90s. This was something that I wanted to reach out and try to bring back a tradition that we used to have at the fair. So this is the first year of having a Bluegrass and Fiddlers Jamboree, and that will be on Saturday, September the 10th in the Creative Arts Building. We'll have roughly over 4,000 in cash and prizes offered for that competition. Also, we'll be moving, this is going to be a little bit new this year, just trying to change a few things up. The marketplace has been typically in the exhibitors building. We're moving the marketplace over to the banquet hall. We're creating a new exhibit in the exhibitors building, which is going to be called Agriculture Live, as seen on the farm. It'll be more interactive, hands-on exhibits for kids and families. We're moving our rabbit and bunny display, basically all that indoors. It will be air conditioned, so we're thinking our count numbers basically will go up there. They have been typically down the last few years due to the fact that we've been using a small table room, kind of hot. Rabbits don't like the heat. So moving them indoors in the exhibitors building, the exhibitors will basically, I think those numbers will go up and
We'll
rise.
have to rename the rabbit barn.
Yes, we'll have to rename the rabbit barn, which has been the table room. So that's one good thing here. So, and we got Farm Bureau, which they have an interactive simulator, ag simulator they'll be bringing. It'll be in the building, along with Mr. Bond, the science guy will be in there. And plus we're having a balloon bonanza, first time ever. We're trying to start something like a lot of other state fairs. They have like sand sculptures or a butter cow display. We're doing one with Sam the Balloon Man, a local artist, and he will be creating a balloon display all 10 days of the fair. So you can it'll be just growing every day. So every day you can get your pictures made with the exhibit, with the artist. It's just something that I think it'll be fun. And if our chairman would like to come up, I'd like to call him up and talk about the second annual FFA, or Tennessee State Fair FFA ham breakfast, and our 4-H 5K. I always get that backwards. Yes.
On the school issue, I wonder if we might want to get together and go chat, have a little presentation over to the school board too. We can probably work that out for them to be touting to their schools and people, because I think it'd be great if now that we're doing that again, and we're coming back to trying to encourage student attendance, that we could try to hop onto one of their meetings tout that and have them sort of pushing it, and I could help you set that up.
Okay, well, we'd definitely appreciate that.
Yeah,
Just
let's
after the
touch
meeting,
base
we'll
on it.
talk and touch base on that. I appreciate
I'd
that.
love to make that a big deal that we're
Yes,
trying
it
to.
should be, because it used to be as many kids out here. Back in the day, we'd have 150 school buses
That's how
out
I
here.
went when I was a kid in public schools here, yeah.
Exactly. All right, thank you. Do you want me to?
Just as it relates to the schools.
Thank
and the
you.
ticket-
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Just as it relates to the schools and the ticket issuance issue, question, will there be anything printed on the backs of the tickets or any type of advertisement or publicity other than the fair itself? Okay, good. The reason I asked that question is because we've opined in the past that we cannot issue tickets to the students with advertising material or campaign material and things like that. So we just wanted to make sure before those things were printed and issued that issue had been addressed. Okay. Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Not gonna put like "Make America Great Again" or anything on the back of that.
Fair trumps all.
Indeed, it does.
Good morning, Commissioners. John Rose, Chairman of the Tennessee State Fair Association. Two events that I wanted to highlight. Of course, as always, you will be invited to attend our opening ceremony on September 9th. And we hope that you can make it out for that event. It's always a highlight of the fair and a chance to see the fair on the opening day. And we hope that you can all attend and encourage others to come out and see how the Tennessee State Fair is progressing. But we do have two events, as Scott already alluded to, the second annual Tennessee State Fair FFA Ham Breakfast. This is an old event that we've resurrected, and as many of you know who supported this event, and I think
They have a table already.
Okay, very good. And any of you who would like to support this is a fundraiser for the FFA, so the funds go to the Tennessee FFA Foundation. But as you will recall from last year, it turned out to be an excellent event for bringing out leaders from the community, and we expect that again this year. The guest speaker will be Mr. Jeff Aiken, who is the newly elected president of the Tennessee Farm Bureau Federation, and Mr. Jimmy Tosh, who's the largest pork producer in Tennessee, has agreed to be chairman of this breakfast, and I think he's 22nd largest pork producer in the country now. So a major agricultural leader in Tennessee, and he'll be chairing the breakfast, and we hope that you'll consider supporting it and helping us reach out to the community, to community leaders and business leaders to find support for this event, which of course also showcases the fair. For those of you who came last year, you know that this is the FFA day at the fair, and so there are lots of FFA and 4-H activities happening that day. There'll be several hundred, maybe a few low thousands of participants from across the state, and in recent years, in fact, we've had participants from Memphis to Mountain City here on that day. So it's one of the days that really does highlight the state nature of our state fair. The other event, and this is not a new event, but it's a little bit different presentation. For the past 2 years, we've had what we call the Funnel Cake 5K, and kind of taking a lead from the FFA Ham Breakfast. This year, it's going to be the Tennessee 4-H Funnel Cake 5K. So the proceeds from this event will go to support 4-H in the same way that the Ham Breakfast proceeds are going to support FFA. And Scott has handed out copies of the flyers. Obviously, you can individually enter the 5K, but if you have a company that wants to be a corporate sponsor, you can bring your whole crew out for that, and any support for that effort will be appreciated as well. I'll be calling a few of you if I don't hear from you. So,
Now, a friend asked me, you can still get a funnel cake without running the 5K? Or
you can
no?
buy a funnel cake.
I just need to, somebody asked me about it, and I wanted to.
But Kenny, you can sponsor the 5K, not run in it, and then eat the funnel cake if you'd like.
Well, I mean, again, somebody else asked me about that, and I'll share that information.
Happy to answer any questions if any of the
If you
commissioners
would,
have questions.
Y'all also raffle off 2 hams at this?
We
And I think
will.
you got quite a bit of money for each one
Yeah,
of them last year.
Absolutely, that's correct, Mr. Sanders. We will auction the 2 champion hams. They're both cured country hams, but one is called country style and the other one is called Packer style. And for those of you who know about hams, you'll know what the difference is. But they're the two best hams in Tennessee, and we will auction those. Mr. Sammy Stewart, who is CEO of F&M Bank, based in Clarksville, is an auctioneer, and he will be doing that auction this year. And so we hope to see lively bidding. I believe they brought over 4,000 apiece last year, and so we're hoping that that will become an element of this event as well. Other questions? Thank you.
Thank you. Ready for the...
I think they are. You ready? Sure, Laura gets one. She's sitting next to her.
Do you want to...
I can tee this up while they're passing it out. So
Prelude here?
as we mentioned previously, we had a wonderful group of interns from the Vanderbilt grad students, Turner Family Center for Social Ventures. They'll introduce themselves in just a second. This summer have been really nice addition to since we've been short-staffed this summer, and just to look at research, kind of a high-level overviews of some things we have been talking about as a board, as a staff, you know, over the past few months. And so just been really, really wonderful, and I'll let them get started and tell a little bit more about them and their organization and things that they looked at for us.
Yes, good morning. My name is Eileen Remley. I am at Peabody at Vanderbilt. I'm working on my M.Ed towards international can I move this? I guess, sorry. Towards international education policy and management. Justin?
Justin Jones. I'm a MBA at Vanderbilt.
Yeah, so I have a quick outline. We're going to touch on a few things. Again, as Caleb said, it will be kind of high level, but kind of go over a financial report dashboard, some key points, a few things about different buildings, as well as some potential revenue generation opportunities. A little bit more about us. We were connected through the Turner Family Center for Social Ventures, which is a graduate student-led center that is based in Owen, and essentially it addresses poverty alleviation through market forces. So our director, Mario, who's also here, and Caleb kind of connected on this unique opportunity to kind of view these fairgrounds in their unique community and kind of look at this from the lens of social enterprise and how to engage maybe some of the surrounding neighborhoods. There were 4 of us. Unfortunately, Charles and Tonelli cannot be with us today, but they also contributed greatly to this project. So after an initial discussion, one of the things that came out of the talk was building a financial dashboard. Essentially what this does is it just takes the regular Metro reports, so you can see across the bottom, that are already generated, and places on top a dashboard that pulls out key important points. So it'll be easy for the board to kind of see how much revenue the buildings are making compared to last year, as well as kind of play with the budget as it goes along. I think one of the important things for us was just trying to understand what was happening here at the fairgrounds, and we really put a lot of effort into just seeing what the day-to-day looked like, talked with many different offices, collected different documents, kind of sorted through them. And so this is just a general overview of the number of events that occur each month, July 15th through June 2016. They were all booked in the events calendar. That does not mean that they all necessarily generated revenue, but they all were booked and were held here at the fairgrounds. So I further broke that down into the total days that each of these individual buildings were occupied. These are the acronyms that are used in the events calendar, essentially. And so one of the things that I just wanted to point out and can be used in future notice is that SPA stands for Sports Arena. It is the most occupied building. However, if you look at the revenue generation from July through June compared to the previous year, you can see that it's not one of the highest generating buildings. So I think just moving forward, it could be good to pay attention to what these events are, what those resources are going into them, and really see kind of the functionality of these buildings. And then the final thing I did here was I just combined the building rental revenue. So this includes what happened at the racetrack. It does not include the flea market. But it does include the rental charge as well as if they rented items. Those two charges are combined. So you can kind of see just a general trend of when events are happening and how much money they're bringing in throughout the year. I did pull together just some of the notable event revenues just to point out a few things. You can kind of see that gun shows, 5K runs, and the race are all repeated events that bring in a varied amount of revenue. But the lawn and garden show and the Christmas village occur once each year, but they bring in a high amount. So paying attention to which of those events only happen once but really bring in a large amount might be also something to kind of target in the future.
Christmas more often.
Yes, more Christmas.
The one thing of building this dashboard, it's really going to be good, I think, from a staff level and board level, is, Metro has these standardized kind of spreadsheets that Doug has to do. It's, not really changing, but we can use this as a dynamic way to take those spreadsheets, plug them in this view, and it can be more, graphical and can help us kind of see what things are happening a lot better, I think, than what we have.
And these are revenue numbers, but don't have the costs associated with it, correct? I mean,
Yes.
just the revenues.
Just revenue, yes.
What happened to the roller derby girls? That was the sports arena, right? And I've heard
They
a few times
practice-
that they want and need a practice facility still.
They do
That's-
practice here.
That is the
They still-
practice
It's about, they
facility.
charge about $100 for the hour. So that's why the sports arena is so full, because the roller girls are here. It's just a discounted price for them to be using these facilities. So I think that's one thing that I noticed. I wanted to break down revenue by all of those buildings, but because they're so often bundled and how you deliver like a package deal to a vendor, it's pretty hard to see kind of where those numbers are falling. And some events are discounted for different groups. So there's not a set price for each of the buildings.
Kenny, they still have the events down at the
Yeah,
municipal,
municipal.
but they practice here is basically.
The next thing that came to our attention was D&D event management. So one of the things we wanted to look at is if we bring in new events, or we look at new revenue generation, what might be something that we need to consider. And something that popped up is that D&D event management has an exclusive contract with the fairgrounds. So there's commission paid to the fairgrounds from their adjusted gross sales. So it's 27% on concessions and 15% on catering. If a food vendor wants to be here, they must buy out that contract. So just considerations with that. If we were, later I'll talk about some other opportunities where we might want to have food trucks or smaller events might want to cater. That could be a conflict. The other thing that we noticed is that they don't actually pay rent on the building here on the property. And that could come out, if you estimated about $24 per square foot, to about $52,000 per year. They also have free parking in a great location, so just something to consider moving forward. This is just a chart that kind of shows that their net sales compared to the net amount due to client, and it's just so you can kind of see how much they're making versus what the fairgrounds is receiving. So the exciting thing we did was we looked at potential revenue opportunities, so ways that we could, right now, kind of with a little effort, maybe bring in and start doing something on the current property. And so one of those main things we looked at was the RV park. Currently, there are 87 operational hookups. Most of them are not used. The current rate is $35 a night, and it's most often used by the flea market vendors who come once a month. What I did essentially was we looked at other downtown lots in major cities, and we found that often there is a lot that has very basic amenities and charges around $35, $40 a night. In Chicago, they don't even have hookups, and they still charge $40 a night. So I think if you look at this next slide, you can see compared to the other RV parks, the location, the driving time to downtown are quite an advantage. I think that with a little bit of effort, it would take a management system that could do reservations, online payments. There would have to be some thought into that. There are other short-term lease management companies that might want to make a contract and manage that for the fairgrounds. But really looking at what you could do with that. And potentially, throughout the summer, we've heard all sorts of ideas. Another one would be to have a few permanent RVs kind of run as an Airbnb so people could come and stay and then leave. That, again, would be something if you did like a short-term lease management company. But I think it's good just to see that it is an advantageous space. And I really think with a little advertising, you could bring in a lot more revenue through those RVs. So here's just a quick chart of if you had 25% occupancy rate, that's about 21, 22 RVs a day, and that would bring in an annual revenue of $277,000. So you can see as it goes up what it could do for you if you kind of brought in those RVs on a regular basis.
That's something Ken's talked about a lot, and I know we talked about the board, and I'm just, I'm struck by that, we've had, 30,000 roughly last year, around 40,000 so far this year, but if we just hit even 0.25% occupancy, we get 270,000. That's just real low-hanging fruit, in my opinion, as well as, as you
You all
mentioned,
talked about for a
providing
little while.
more services to the community.
Yes, I think the main confusion right now with them, they're scattered all over the property. I think we need to cluster them to management and be able to take reservations. If somebody's looking for slot number 80 right now, good luck. I don't know where it is either.
Right.
But yes, a reservation system is essential. And then I think to cluster these in one part of the property would free up land that's not usable right now because we got the RV spots kind of chopping it up. So
Important takeaway for after we hear from Larry's items for you and Laura to kind of look at moving
yeah,
forward.
I agree with the comment about low-hanging fruit. It wouldn't take a lot of effort to relocate all this and start taking reservations. So hope we can move on that one.
So one of the things we looked at was the potential for a soccer stadium. In the news lately, there's been a lot of things about a USL franchise coming. They'll want a stadium, potentially need a stadium. And then today in the Tennessean, there's actually a really good article about an influential group trying to get an MLS franchise. So the first thing we did was we researched the economic impact, mostly by just looking for other cities that had published studies. So we found 3, Atlanta, Sacramento, and Orlando, and they estimated the impact to the metro areas of each city at about $30 million. These studies tend to be a little bit optimistic, so 15 to 25 million, that's probably a good estimate. We looked at the USL, which, so if you don't know, the USL is a minor league soccer division. And so there were no studies currently for the USL, but Louisville has financed one. I think they financed it in January, so hopefully it should be coming out soon. I went to one of their games. I think it's probably pretty comparable to what Nashville could expect.
Is the Louisville Stadium on the fairgrounds property?
So right now, no. Louisville right now, they're trying to build a stadium, and they play in the minor league baseball stadium, which is pretty comparable to the Sound Stadium, the new one. So that's for the Metro. To try to get an idea of what impact that might have on the fairgrounds, we tried to think about, well, how many people are actually coming to this? So we looked at some comparable cities by population, demographics, growth trends, and tried to estimate from those cities what Nashville might expect. So for MLS, they had 5 cities, and most of these are on the smaller side because MLS is in all of your major cities. And from looking at these, estimated about 18 to 22,000 fans per game, and that's tickets purchased, so it might not be exactly how many people are coming, but it should be a good estimate. And at the bottom, you get a picture of the range. There's a range of 14,000 to all the way up to 41,000 people go to games in Seattle. It's kind of crazy. Looking at the USL, you had a lot more comparable sized cities. And because it's a minor league, you have a lot wider range in what they're doing. A lot of the cities are really struggling to get stadiums at all, or the teams, I guess. So their attendance numbers are kind of dampened by that. The main cities here to look at felt like were Cincinnati, Indianapolis, and Louisville. Felt like they offered some pretty good comparisons. Cincinnati's, this is their first year, and they're blowing everybody away in attendance numbers. They've got 16,000 fans coming to minor league soccer games.
Where do our grandstand seat?
15.
So, yeah, not sure 16,000, but I think Indy and Louisville, those are good comparisons, and I think Nashville could probably 8 to 12,000 is probably what you could expect, and that's 14 games a year they would play here, and of course you can have other events too. MLS plays right now 18, but as their league grows, that could expand too.
Did you look at the women's professional soccer?
No. But I do know off the top of my head that they tend to play in the MLS stadiums. I think it's sort of like the NBA and the WNBA. They kind of pair them together and go with sort of similar marketing. And so with those numbers, we looked at what the cost for a stadium might be, and mostly just looked at the recent stadiums that have been built since I think 2010. And going with the numbers, felt like for MLS, 18 to 25,000 seats was about what you would expect to build, and the cost based on the recent stadiums, 100 upwards to $200 million, and that's actually in the Tennessean today. The article said they were thinking about a $200 million stadium, or that's what the group was hoping for. USL and for MLS, if they were to get an MLS franchise, they would almost certainly have to build a new stadium. There's some situations where the first year or two, they might play in a stadium like the Titans. If they might play in the city's local NFL stadium, but that doesn't last. You have to have a new stadium. The USL is trying to move towards a new stadium model, but you have teams like Louisville that are playing in minor league baseball. Cincinnati is playing in the college football stadium. But for the teams that have built new stadiums in USL, they're about 10 to 15,000 seats, $25 to $50 million. Well, not 50 million for the ones that have been built so far, but if you were looking at the larger, that's probably about where you would be going. That's it.
Chairman, when you went to playoffs with your family, did you go to one of these stadiums, or was it at a?
Memorial Day weekend, we went out to Portland and saw both the men's team and the women's team. They play in the same stadium.
Was it a stadium for soccer?
It was, yeah.
Okay, so
We've been to Seattle and
you definitely have an idea of what the requirements are, and
my daughters are huge fans. So
my understanding, much like football, you like to get right down as close to the field as you can, and somebody made the comment that the baseball fields weren't as desirable because the orientation was sideways, and so I don't know. I knew you.
yeah,
were
you'd have
soccer.
everybody looking one direction, kind of like the racetrack where you're all sitting on one side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the desired design gives you a panoramic view. Okay.
Are you rowdy, Ned?
We didn't, but it was fun. Kids were excited.
Can I ask a question or two back on the page 5 of our sheets? But I don't know not on soccer. You said you're comparing the Christmas Village and things like that. You have a race here. Is that?
It's all 8 races.
All 8 races. So that's everything we get for the full year for car racing.
It's not everything for the track, but it's for the 8 races.
The 8 races that we do. Okay.
Yes.
So we get more in the lawn and garden show.
Yes.
One weekend.
So the next idea for revenue generation that we approached was a farmer's market. The fairgrounds has a unique location. I really think this neighborhood could have the opportunity to get fresh produce. The bus line runs down Nolensville Pike. You have a neighborhood next to here, and there isn't a current market. We looked into 12 South and the farmers market off of Rosa Parks, and we really saw, especially the neighborhood market, 12 South is doing very well. I really think we looked at the property, and what I decided was Shed 4 has a cement floor. And it has 10 by 10 stalls already there for the flea market. So you could do a very similar model where you charged a flat fee of $35 for a booth. If you charge for table and chairs, as well as if it is possible to bring in food trucks, If you had 40 vendors, 50% of which who rented items, and 4 food trucks, it's an annual revenue of $91,000. I think you already have kind of the setup to do it. I think with a little bit of encouragement, there would be a lot of interest in a farmer's market. There's not a lot of access to fresh produce right here.
Yeah, I think that's really neat. I mean, we're kind of in a food desert in terms of this community. You know, you've got a lot of low-income areas close to here, as well as just a pocket, and also meeting with what the agricultural history of the fairgrounds, and also just talking again another low-hanging fruit. I mean, we have all the existing infrastructure because of the flea market staff and tables and even place, and so just kind of complimenting that. Not to mention I think you mentioned the traffic we get just coming through the road. It makes a lot of sense, it seems.
Yeah, we talked about Thursday night being a good opportunity to do this, just because there's already a few markets on Tuesdays and the weekend market, and on Thursday maybe you could potentially also catch commuters who were headed out and wanted to buy for the weekend. This last idea is called a makerspace. I'm not sure how many people are familiar with a makerspace, but essentially it's a community center with tools. So Audra Ladd from the Mayor's Office with Economic Development Office was out here, and we were discussing potentially some really cool ways we could maybe build up social enterprise or small businesses in the area, and one thing we settled on was potentially a makerspace. Makerspaces are ran in many, many different ways. I've looked into about 8 that have done very well around the United States, and essentially they make their revenue off of memberships, classes, and events, and then depending on the management system, also rent. So there would be an initial investment in the space creation, but essentially you would have workshops where local artisans, entrepreneurs could come in and use woodshop tools. They could use electronics. They also, the way they are built, have rental spaces. So if you're a small business that doesn't have space in your home, you're moving out, maybe you have a woodworking shop, you could keep your tools or your product in that space. So it's something that I'm going to look more into along with Audra as we move forward. But I do think it's a unique position to kind of cultivate this innovative space. I went to Porter Flea. There's Fort Houston nearby. I just think there's kind of this growing community of small social enterprises and entrepreneurs and artisans in Nashville, and this could really maybe be a unique opportunity to kind of capitalize on that. One building we did look at originally was the Bransford building, which is located at Bransford and Craighead. We discovered that it is currently and always has been kind of operated by the Election Commission. They have an office in there and all of the current voting machines. So that's all housed down there. They don't pay rent, so currently it has a loading dock. The location is very good. There's no air conditioning. So I just ran some numbers at 10 square feet and then, of course, at the 21st square feet per year, just to kind of show what potentially maybe could happen with that building if the Election Commission were to move or not. So that's just another consideration for that building.
I think one thing I just want to add, one of the reasons why I looked at this is, this neighborhood has kind of a good artisan backbone. You've got, not to mention all the Wedgwood, Houston, the maker space is already there, but it's also changing a lot. There, the main one is
Fort Houston.
Fort Houston. It has been purchased recently by development groups, so these people may be displaced. You also have lots of artisans. A lot of the she talked about Porter Flea. We have the flea market, but we don't have a kind of complimentary high-end actual that type of thing. So I thought it one of those things that after their research, I thought it made a lot of sense as well.
If I could of course, this is on fairgrounds property, but it has been, used for that purpose for many years. Probably not the best use. As Caleb pointed out, being in the neighborhood, that's a good site, and the building is sound. It could be certainly remodeled and refurbished. In keeping with the mayor's philosophy about the fairgrounds, she wants to make it, quote, a community asset. This idea could be one that would further involve the community, and I think it's a really good idea. I think as far as warehouses for voting machines, I think the city's full of warehouses, and certainly a lot of the services like that are located over at what's called they call it Southeast Metro. It's the old Genesco Shoe Company. So there's a lot of things located out there, but certainly as far as warehousing, I think there's warehouses everywhere, but there's not another building already built where we could do this in the community. So I'm all for trying to make that a community asset.
Does the election commission pay us rent for that building?
No, sir.
And they've had that since the 50s, is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Back when they used to put a mirror at the
They're
end of the
flooded
town.
with funds over there, the election
Yeah.
commission. They're just,
I think this is another good thing for you and Laura to take a look at and work with the mayor's office and potentially the election commission on.
Well, my main point, of course, was that as far as the building being here and becoming a community asset, whereas there's warehouses all over town, so it seems like a no-brainer.
Got it.
So then the last slide that I put together was just about community involvement, kind of what we said. The mayor's office really is looking to get some input kind of on what these fairgrounds could be. So there is an organization called Hood Starter, and what they do is build a platform page where communities can post ideas on what they think should happen with some of these buildings. I think it would be a good place to kind of crowdsource some of our ideas. So we could put the farmer's market, we could put maybe seeing Border Flea, a maker space. We've heard an incubator kitchen. It's really been a fun summer because so many people have so many ideas about what we could do with this space. And I really think this might be a good way to kind of include people to see what else is out there, and you can vote on them so you can really see what are popular ideas. And it might just be a good way to kind of get that involvement piece for the fairgrounds.
There's a packet in here for the board members about Hood Starter. It came to my attention. I have a coworker who actually is in Minneapolis, and he's a part of this group, and he started this. They mainly get their business models around getting community development organizations or developers that have a building or building something and say, hey, what does the community want in this space? What's the need? So I think it actually started thinking about it after Laura in her interview was talking about kind of getting community input, finding, kind of I wouldn't call it a strategic plan, but finding things that people want to do here. I also think it dovetails in nicely with the RFI that we have something we may not even be thinking about that the community may be wanting here. We can go to that vendor and say, hey, we needed one of these shows here. So Ned, I know, is the web guru on this, so I'd ask you probably look more into this. They have sent a contract, but it's actually just to use our name and likeness on their page. They've offered this to us for free, just to be nice and actually get in this market, and through the connection I had with them. So I think it's worthwhile, and maybe, I don't know if we need official action, but I know Ned knows this a lot more about this than I do, and I'd just ask him, or any of the board members, if they have any input, I'd be glad to put you in touch with them. And Susan has their contract, per se.
Excellent, thank you, and thank you, Caleb, for working with them and organizing this. Any other comments or
I think Mario
questions?
if you want to close this out, do you have anything? Mario is the director of the Turner Family Center. If you'll just go up to the mic, and just want to thank him for allowing, and the interns. I mean, they've worked all summer.
Yeah, it's great.
Full time on this, and they've done a great job. Really pleased with them.
Yeah, and I would just like to thank the board for allowing us and our students to come in and help on this project. I think the interesting thing about our center is that it doesn't stop at the summer. So part of what we are doing moving forward is year-long fellowships for a student to kind of continue to lead this. And again, the students that we work with at Vanderbilt are all graduate level master students and also PhDs. So the ability to continue to work with the fairgrounds is something that we're obviously very interested in moving forward, is allowing one of our students as well, or a couple of them, to continue as a fellow to explore some of these options. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we can move forward here to Fairgrounds Nashville Evaluation and Site Improvement Study. Larry Atman and team.
Thank you. Thank you very much for allowing us to share this morning. Over the last several months, we've gotten to know many of you, staff and board, and we appreciate all the assistance that we were given as we worked on this study. Let me highlight for you kind of a different way we went about doing this. one day I was asked, how would we go about doing a study of the fairgrounds? And I made kind of a bold and different statement. I said, I'd like to team up with one of the universities. And that happened to be TSU, largely because on several of the other large capital projects that we had worked on within Metro, we had a pool of students, much like you had students this summer, who have been with us through Music City Center, the Riverfront, the stadium. And we said, I'd like to try something different. So I went and talked to my good friend, Dr. Keith Hargrove, sitting here on the front row, and said, what if we did this study together? What would you think about that? And he responded that he would be happy to work on it. He is the dean of the College of Engineering at TSU. Interestingly, I had no idea. He's got 1,000 students in his program. So he put together a team of faculty members and students, some under, some at graduate level, and we started to form how we thought we would go about this study. In addition to that, a number of gentlemen on my staff were involved in the first sheet, and the one that's on the board right now, kind of highlights the team we put together to do this. And so I'll be interested later to hear your reaction of how this might have worked, but it's kind of a new thing. They were compensated for their work, but we met every Friday for a number of months. We met with your staff, who were terrific in providing us mountains of information. And let me just headline what we didn't do, and then Keith is going to come up and talk about what we set out to do. As we dug into this, we saw you had a closet full of master plans. We thought we don't need to do that again. We saw that you had other programs in place, much like the Vandy Group. But we thought what we would do or should do with some concurrence from you all was to focus on facilities and site and infrastructure, and what could we reasonably get done to start to turn the corner to put some invested capital into the fairgrounds. So that was really our focus. So Keith, come on up. And just to kind of how we're going to walk through this real quickly this morning, Keith is going to hit the overview of how we got and what we did. Ed Henley, who's the gentleman sitting here by the commute, is our manager of budget, finance, and administration on capital projects. He's going to hit some of the financial headlines. Jordan Wyman is a vice president for project management. He dug into the buildings themselves along with the students. And so he's going to kind of headline. So we're going to go from real high picture to real narrow picture and then back to big, broad. And we're going to summarize then our recommendations. So Keith?
Thank you, Larry. Good morning, board. It's indeed a pleasure to be here. We're excited about the opportunity to present to you our findings. I would like to provide a couple of acknowledgments before we continue. I do want to acknowledge Ken Sanders and Scott Wallace and the rest of the staff of the fairgrounds. They have been just really supportive with our team being on the site, doing multiple walkthroughs through the building facilities, and been very supportive and cooperative as we make the assessment and evaluations of the buildings and the fairgrounds. So again, to Ken and Scott Wallace, I think I saw him here, and the rest of your outstanding team that work here in the fairgrounds, who do an outstanding, exceptional job with the resource that you have. We really appreciate your support on the time that we spent here. And again, I have to acknowledge my good friend Larry as well. We've had some students work with Larry in the construction of the convention center. So we've had engineering students from Tennessee State University work with his outstanding organization in that respect. And we're just very fortunate to work on this. And the good thing is that our students had the opportunity to be mentored by the staff of Commonwealth and really learn real-world experience about what it's like doing this type of work before they graduate. So on the screen, it's important that in this project, we wanted to be very clear on our scope of work, the things that we were going to do, things that we were not going to do, and to produce these results and studies for the mayor's office, and yourself. And so it really comes down to doing a site assessment as what is there and how can we do an assessment in terms of improving its functional and operational activities. And that, in a sense, include the infrastructure, the buildings, what things are enhancements, upgrades, renovations, and site improvement to, again, support the operational activities of the fairgrounds. And so we have 5 bullet points there. The first one is, again, to assess the facility condition of the buildings and the fairgrounds. And so with a team of our students and Larry and his team, multiple walkthroughs during the summer and the early part of the spring, looking at a number of aspects of these buildings. Secondly, we have also had a faculty member, a GIS, Geographical Information Systems, individual that, with the cooperation of the Metro Planning Office, to look at some of the ground facilities, which included, of course, the floodplain area of the site as well. And then next, we looked at, to complement the previous presentation, we also looked at some of the revenue generating activities and expenses of the fairgrounds. In other words, we wanted to see that for the infrastructure that is here, what's making money and what makes common sense in terms of improving and enhances current infrastructure in the building that's on site. And so we plan to and share with you and recommend some site improvements for that. And then lastly, also recommend some potential uses. Larry mentioned earlier that there has been a number of previous studies, marketing studies to make recommendations of what the fairgrounds could be and what have you. But our perspective was primarily focused on what is already here and what minor improvements, enhancement would help do that in terms of its operational capacity. I think on the next slide, you will see, and this is a as-is figure of the fairground site. And within our report, throughout the report, it's purposely color-coded to coincide with the buildings, their expenses, their use, and a description of each of those buildings with reference to the financial output as well. So I will end on that note, and then we will proceed with a description of the financial impact of the site.
Good morning, everyone. As Larry said, Ed Henley here. I'm going to just start by prefacing the portion of the presentation that I'm giving. We're just letting you all know that the charts that you're going to see, there are 5 of them. And we coordinated with the Vanderbilt students, but our chart is a broader kind of overview that we use as a basis for making our recommendations throughout the presentation and the report that you'll receive later. I'm going to go through these and kind of paint a picture, hopefully, from what the charts are showing. I'll start with just the annual revenue by the facility spaces. And Ken, I think you asked the question earlier about the raceway. This number in the chart does include all activity at the facility. A little bit different than what
contractors that use us for tire testing and all that stuff.
Absolutely. And one thing that you'll see in the
They have festivals on it. I mean, there's a lot.
Absolutely. It's been a very active space in terms of non-race stuff. So that's calculated here. The handout that you all just received shows as is. One thing on that is you'll see a color coding for the buildings, and that is represented here on this chart and also be represented later on certain graphics that you'll see throughout our presentation. I'll kind of just give you an overview.
And point out, this clearly does not include the flea market, right?
Absolutely. So you'll see my note at the bottom.
I mean, because that would be off the chart.
It would jump completely off the charts. And the flea market has its own chart later in the slides.
I mean, because we have a lot of extra people here, and just for the record, you know, we have a roughly over $3 million budget, and we get over $1.5 million in revenue from the flea market. So 50% of our budget is flea market. And so, I mean, it's fine y'all didn't look at it. I just want to make sure that's like a noticeable,
Oh,
tells a big
There's a
story
dedicated
here at
chart
the
to it for
fairgrounds.
sure.
Yeah.
You're making my part easy.
I'll just add to his, that's the only production that is in-house too.
Very much. So if we look at the chart that's on the screen, as I mentioned, the color coding is there, and you have the last 3 fiscal years that were completed historically during the time of our assessment. So fiscal year 2013, 2014, and 2015. I'd just like to highlight that 2015 is what you're seeing here, those green bars. And as you kind of make your way across the chart, you see that the green bars are kind of jumping above the previous 2 years. I think that's, a testament to the momentum I think that Bonham mentioned earlier, and just the staff and what they're doing to really kind of energize the site in its current state, and what they're doing to maximize the asset that they currently have. One thing I also want to highlight, aside from mentioning the flea market note at the bottom of the page, is also outdoor space. If you kind of look closer to the right side of the chart, that green bar is really starting to jump compared to the other two. I have a dedicated slide for that as well that'll just talk about how the outdoor space is being maximized as far as other events that are taking place at the fairgrounds. So what I was showing you was the pretty picture of the revenue growth, but the next slide and the slide after are related to expenses. One thing that I want to mention about the utility cost for the fairgrounds is that it has also increased as you saw the revenue increasing. Looking at the chart, it's jumped about $70,000 to $80,000 per year over each fiscal year, which is a large operating budget burden. And as Ken mentioned, in a budget that's overall $3 million, having that type of jump year over year is, very difficult to manage. One thing I do want to point out also is that's about 15% from fiscal year 2013 to 2014, and then about 11% from fiscal year 14 to 15, which I'm not sure how you go through your budgeting process, but it's very difficult to anticipate. So I did want to mention that. This next slide shows the annual maintenance and repair expense over those same 3 years. And one thing that I also want to point out here is it's a substantial expense just in its regard for the facility, but it's, as you see, the charts are kind of bouncing up and down. Unlike most of the charts you'll see where there's kind of steady or either a progression in growth, this shows that there's a lot of unanticipated repairs that happen out here on the facility. Mentioning the budgeting burden that presents, but also just an operational challenge on day-to-day life when you have something fail as far as a mechanical system or some type of service that you're providing to a client. One of the things that we hope that our recommendations will do is alleviate this type of sporadic repair needs on the site by upgrades, and then also with the utility expenses as we're updating the types of electrical and mechanical systems, of course, those costs will be driven down. I'm gonna call this Ken's slide. So the flea market revenue, as you can see, has grown year over year over the same period of time by over $120,000 per year. Fiscal year 2015, 1.7 million, so above half of that.
Didn't even pre-plan this.
We didn't plan it at all. One thing that I would like to point out is, and I'm going to touch on it in the next slide about the parking and outdoor space. Parking for the flea market has not shown the same trend of growth as the actual booth rent for the flea market. I think that could be a testament to what Eileen was kind of speaking about, is how parking and things on the site are organized. But just wanted to kind of show that while the trend is growing in the flea market overall, parking has kind of not have that same uptick over the past 3 years.
It's a reflection of attendance.
Well, at one point, did we increase? I know we had a motion and approved at some point the increase on booth rentals. Do you remember that?
That has been about 2 years ago.
Okay, that might have been okay. That might be one of the reasons, right? But I don't know.
On the revenue, yes, because our flea market revenues is booths and equipment.
We currently have a waiting list, right, too?
What they want, Caleb, is indoor space. We have a waiting list for indoor space.
Yep.
Gotcha. I digress just 1 minute. I'll give up for example. The Vaughn building is nothing more than shed one with walls on it. That's how the Vaughn, we needed indoor space many years ago. They just put walls on shed one and made it the Vaughn building. So that would, some of the waiting lists, that's what they're waiting for is indoor space, because whether it rains or snows or whatever, and it's a lot easier, the heat, the cold, whatever doesn't affect the merchandise, so.
Thanks, Ken. The chart that's up on the screen now is the final chart for the financial portion of the presentation. It's sort of a blended chart between annual parking revenue and the outdoor space. And I just kind of wanted to use this chart to also emphasize that while the flea market parking fees have kind of remained above the $310,000 annually, rentals parking fees, so the non-flea market parking, has declined year over year, somewhat substantially. But I do want to take this time to also highlight the growth in the outdoor space. In fiscal year 2013, there was about $16,500 that was generated. And by the end of 2015, that number had grew to over $102,000. And so that type of growth just shows the viability of the outdoor space at the fairgrounds. So when you saw that large spike on the first chart, it's represented here. And you can see that that's kind of helped keep, if you group these three things together, help kind of keep that trend steady, but know that that outdoor space and the efforts of the staff to kind of pump that up have kind of offset some of those parking, we'll just say the decline in those fees. I've kind of told you all the financial story with the numbers and just kind of set the basis of that for our assessment. I'm going to turn it over to Jordan, and he's going to give you more of a visual view of the condition and current status of the site and the buildings on the fairgrounds.
While he's doing that, I wanted to make y'all aware of something. I think word got out once we started charging for parking for events, and that all you needed to do was go to the doctor and get a placard, because since we're Metro property, anybody with a disability placard or license plate can park free. And so the last evaluation we did of that situation, about 22% of the people that come onto the fairgrounds, that's all events, have a placard now. And that's just a factor. Now, I'm not criticizing people that have a disability, but just merely pointing out that that number is now about 22%.
I have one quick question, Ken. Can you give us some examples of new events that's helping the outside space on revenue?
Yes. One that's most obvious is these runs that we have, color runs, 5K runs, those type things. Had some shows that, we have one this weekend, the street legal show, where the vehicles are outside. We've had some, as far as the outside things in the stadium, we've had cultural events, food fairs, things like that, barbecue fests. The Warp Tour is completely outside. It's a concert event. And part of our past weekend, the dinosaur show, part of that was outside, some of that display. Huge show. If you didn't get to see it, I wish y'all would go on YouTube and look at some of it. It's amazing. Yeah, it's expanded really well, and that's trying to expand. I mean, the buildings are full on weekends, not necessarily all of them, but certain buildings are booked 50 weeks out of the year, say. So the only thing left was trying to market the outside space. Another good one that'll be coming up pretty soon is a parking and shuttle facility. We'll be doing that for Vanderbilt during their construction period, where the students park here and get shuttled to Vanderbilt campus. Had that same situation buying on things, major sporting events downtown. We've been trying to look at everything we could and still forward-looking.
That's great, thank you.
Go ahead and turn it over to Jordan. There you go.
Any other financial questions? All right, thank you, Ed. I'm Jordan Wyman, and one of the main objectives that we had for this particular project was to really dive into the facilities and the structures and the buildings and how they're used for events and how they're used day to day and how they're operated and how they're maintained. So what you can see on the screen up there is a few examples of some of the things that we came across during our inspections and evaluations and walkthroughs. We looked at main electrical components, lighting fixtures, outside structures, the painting, the roofing, HVAC systems. Next slide there. A few other examples of restroom facilities, some more lighting there in the sports arena. So these were all broad spectrum things that we looked at. Flooring, roofing, all these elements were what we wanted to key in on and evaluate their current conditions. Also, during the evaluation, we reviewed the site and took into consideration what happened in 2010, what area of the site was impacted by the flood. In the light blue there, you can see the FEMA report of the flood impacted area. And then it keys in on the area shown inside the racetrack there that actually was impacted during 2010. Then the next slide, one more. Got the matrix on there. In your packet, you've got a Fairgrounds Building Evaluations matrix. And this was a table that we used after we reviewed every building and every facility and almost every square inch of the property. We narrowed it down to 4 to 6 buildings, and we looked at them from a few different elements, keying back to what Ed just reviewed with you from a financial aspect, revenues and expenses and things like that. So on this matrix, up at the top, there's a legend and a few things that we looked at. We kind of graded each building. An income rating was given to each building scaled from 1 to 10, 1 being the most proficient and 10 being the least. Also a usage rating, so frequency of usage, 1 through 10 as well, 1 being the most frequently used, 10 being the least frequently used.
I see a lot of the board members trying to read the chart. There's a full 11 by 17 printout of the chart that'll come with the report. And actually what you're looking at is a snippet of that. So there's a little bit more as far as the end on the columns and things like that. Just it wouldn't print well and fit in the packet, but you'll have a full size version to look at and review.
Everybody got a copy of that before I get too far ahead?
Question?
Hey, Jordan.
Yes.
Real quick, why is there no income rating on the grandstand and building usage frequency?
When we initially started the report, the racetrack was combined kind of with the grandstand together. And then later on, we were given further direction to focus directly on the grandstand. Okay. And because the grandstand now is kind of pulled away from the racetrack and the racetrack itself is what typically generates the revenue, we kind of left that rating aside. Back to the legend at the top, also some key characteristics to look for was the state of condition for some of these different things that we looked at as far as the current state. Salvageable, meaning we could put a little to it and make it better. Poor would be, it really has to be demolished and start from scratch. And then satisfactory, meaning that it's good enough in its current state that we could use it as it is. So one example, if you look, also this chart is color-coded to match the map that you have there in front of you. So each building is color-coded. For instance, the banquet hall is green, shown on the map, and then also on the matrix it's shown in green. So to use the banquet hall as an example, income rating, we got it at 5, which 5 has got it between $61,000 and $70,000. Frequency usage is a 3, rating of a 3, so used fairly frequently. Should we demolish it? No, we shouldn't. Paint conditions are salvageable. Flooring conditions are poor, should be replaced. Sorry, roofing conditions, not flooring. Building uses for fair or expos. Electrical and lighting is poor, should be replaced. Flooring conditions are salvageable. HVAC is poor, needs replacement. Plumbing conditions are poor. Door conditions. So those are all things that we focused on specifically. And one trend to look at as you read through this matrix, and to touch back on Ed's financial reports, is you'll notice a trend between the current condition of some of these buildings and your maintenance and operating costs.
I had a question, it's maybe a Ken question, but I thought we spent a lot of our, I can't remember, the 2% monies on HVACs over the last few years, but they're all rated pretty poor, to say the least.
What we found is that, yes, units have been replaced, so the monies have been used to install new units, but because some of these buildings are so large, they require multiple units per building, and if you're only replacing 1 or 2, it's still not going to be able to maintain the full facility. So maybe you have a building that has 4 different heat and air units and you've got 1 replaced, it would be a recommendation to replace the other 3. And then,
Caleb, I think it would be analogous to a 6-cylinder engine running on 2 cylinders. It's going to wear the engine out.
a good analogy.
The one that you did replace, and it's being hampered.
Same with lighting and plumbing fixtures. A trend that we saw was an upgrade on plumbing fixtures could immensely help in water bills. Lighting could help with electrical bills.
I would add that the buildings being old and not energy efficient, the air conditioning units and the heating units work really hard.
Y'all also looked at door condition. I know one of the things we have talked about, and I know the Jurassic shows were kind of one concern, was about having garage doors for some of these buildings to get in bigger stuff. Was that looked at?
Mainly in the one concern that we heard while meeting with some of the staff was that the creative arts was fairly underutilized because of its restriction with all the columns in front of overhead doors and things like that. So to answer your question, yes, that was looked at, yes.
Thank you.
Yep. Is there any other building evaluation questions?
Caleb, follow up on the dinosaurs. This particular company, they disassembled these and then reassembled them. So that was the reason this particular company, it worked.
All right, so that we want to give you that context, both financial and condition, which kind of formed the basis for why we're going to recommend what we recommend here. So Keith and I are going to kind of run through these recommendations, tag teaming off of each other. Subsequent to that, we've got some detailed budget analysis, which formed the basis of the capital request through Metro. And just so you know, when we get done, we've got a whole big report to hand you as well. So, Keith, number 1.
Sure. So the document on the building evaluation, that's really the true essence of our report. Again, to assess the functional operations of these buildings and what could be done to actually upgrade them to improve the operational efficiency of the buildings as well as the activities of the fairgrounds. So the first item is we recommended the renovation and upgrading of 3 to 5 of the most used exhibition buildings. And to be more specific, our team, as Jordan alluded to, there are some renovations that we strongly encourage be addressed with reference to some of the electrical systems, the HVAC, plumbing, lighting, the security and low voltage systems, roofing, that we think will make a major impact in terms of the building themselves, including some structural improvements to address access to the buildings. And also the last part is recommending some upgrades to the grandstand. Now, that's a specific area for the grandstand only, but we're recommending that resources be provided for there. And then, which coincides with item 2, we are recommending the demolition of a couple buildings, specifically that are considered really dilapidated, and also from an aesthetic perspective, removing poles, fences, some of the outdated features, and cleaning up around some of the facilities, such as the storage lots. And this other item, which may be debatable, but the relocation of 140 plus school buses that are currently located on the fairgrounds property.
I have a quick question. Ken, how much rental revenue do we get from those school buses?
It's not impressive. It was negotiated many years ago as a courtesy and cooperative effort, $7,000
Over what time?
total.
Total per year?
No, to be honest, the junk school buses or the surplus school buses, that is a recent situation. They have not been able, for some reason, to sell those or move those out. So those stayed here all last year, and they're still all over the metro area. They can find no other place to move them. Of course, those are staying here in cooperation. They're not paying any rent on that agreement. The $7,000 a year rent is for the summer parking of the buses that are out of service. So these, like I say, that's a recent development. Buses that are actually taken out of service, not disposed of them yet. Working on a way to do that, but it didn't happen last year, and it'll happen because we'll have 40. I'm sure by the end of the year there'll be some more that'll be cycled out. So at some point, there's got to be a remedy to that. We could also use that land as we route our runs. They're kind of in the way.
And about how many acres is that, do y'all estimate? I mean, it looks like a large portion of that
I mean,
corner.
I don't know that number off the top of my head, Bonna, but we can figure it out.
Mr. Lewis, they're talking about that triangle back there by the creek.
Thank you.
So item 3 is, again, focus on providing some resources for site improvements. You know, simple things like building and road access, signage, you know, some new trash receptacles, landscape pockets, as well as exterior lighting and other enhancements for the site.
Essentially, our strategy in all of these recommendations is to put this year's resources into areas where it really shows, that it really starts to say, we're turning the corner, we're investing capital in this facility, and this is phase 1. Actually, we lay out recommendations for years 2 and 3, hope to coincide that with the capital plan, but the idea is let's get started, let's do some things that improve the appearance and set the tone for what's to come.
And I like to capture a term that Ken made about turning or using the fairgrounds as a community asset. And so the 4th recommendation is the creation of some recreational soccer fields for youth and adult, and they vary in size, of course, but located in the certain areas within the fairgrounds. We believe that because of the growth in the adjacent community and its demographics, this type of recreational facility would be very attractive and provide more engagement with the fairgrounds, and also be a true reinforcement for the community. And then item 5, we're recommending that all of these recommendations happens in phases. Most of these are happening in phase 1, but we're also planning for phase 2 and phase 3, which is essentially over a 3-year period. That includes looking at what additional property improvements, considering the development plans for the Browns Creek Greenway through the fairgrounds property, which in some ways could be controversial, but we also believe that that also will be an asset to the facility. Looking at additional park and recreational facilities, such as we recommended 4 potential dog parks for the site as well. And in addition, we also did a pretty thorough traffic analysis. In the report itself, we looked at 5 different intersections for around the fairgrounds. And we found most of those to be relative, a decent level of service. But there are one particular site that we wanted to recommend a realignment, which is located here for Wash Road.
You all can see that in the handout that you have kind of popping off the page in red. Yeah.
And so we did a.
Like that.
You like that? Ken likes that. So we did a traffic study on that, and we found the level of service to be more productive and less delays by redirecting that Walsh Road alignment. And there are 2 purposes. One, to minimize traffic delays, and then secondly, that actually opens up more area or property in the northeast corner of the fairgrounds to do some potentially other things. And so that's 2 real benefits from the realignment of that road.
Just for the benefit of everybody that doesn't recall, Walsh Road is not a metro road. It is a private road here on the property. And for
You had the Google Fiber issue on that, is that what?
yeah, you did recently. They didn't even realize that it wasn't a metro road, so retroactively they did come to the board and seek permission. But traditionally, when there weren't events on the property, they've left it open as a convenience to the community. Closed it like flea market and other large events, but part of the congestion that you'll see every afternoon here is people going down Walsh Road to Knowles Road and trying to make a left turn. There's no light, and it's
So that they can get up there and then wait on the train for
it's
45
just
minutes.
not planned very well. Back when we were out in the country and there's 5 cars an hour, may have worked very well, but nowadays it backs up all the way up to the back area. So this is a wonderful idea.
So what we did is to try to align with the budget of the capital budget a little bit with our recommendations, and that's the slide that Ed just put up, and it's the sheet that's color-coded here. And this will take a lot of work between us and the staff, but this is a first pass at a budget, if you will. If you recall, in the Metro capital budget right now is $12 million for the fairgrounds and $3 million for the park elements on fairground property. So we studied this in relation to the chart that Jordan showed you and came up with some very preliminary estimates. It kind of ties back to our first recommendation that says let's renovate 3 to 5 buildings. Why did I say 3 to 5? Let me tell you, we think we know a lot about your buildings right now, but I'm sure that we're going to learn a lot. So we'll see how far the money goes. But if we went through 5, this is kind of the budget. We've laid some money aside in this budget for the grandstand improvements. Some of that we've got to define with you all a little further. And then some of the site improvements, we're saying let's set aside and start to figure out what about $1 million, $750,000 would buy us.
Yes, ma'am.
Does the report elaborate on the grandstand improvements?
It only suggests that we've got to do things with restrooms and fencing and concessions and paint and lighting and that kind of stuff. But the detail of which in all of these, what we'd like to do
Those are
after
some nice restrooms.
What's that?
Those are some nice restrooms you're planning on putting in there.
Yes.
Seriously, $2.5 million for restrooms?
Well, I mean, it's just a budget number right now with not a lot of definition. We put it as a placeholder because I think there's probably a lot that you know that we don't know about what you really need there. And that's the sense of
I
all
think
these.
the question we have is that the racetrack has always been the gorilla in the room of the Fair Board, or recently. And, we need to start addressing it honestly.
Yep.
And I guess my question is, just to be clear, you were asked not to look at the racetrack.
Correct. Yeah, knowing that the lease is about to end and that you're going to issue an RFQ.
You didn't make that decision.
Huh?
You didn't make that decision. I mean, somebody else.
Yes.
Metro told you, don't look at the racetrack.
Correct. And that was somewhat of a conversation. It wasn't really a directive.
Right.
It was more of a, hey, this is coming up. How do we go about this? Initially, we didn't have any money in the original budget for the grandstand. They said, hey, that's a big component out there. Let's look at what it would take to improve that.
And you understand, the frustration a little bit is that this is a gorilla that we've been having to deal with. The numbers, we saw today, a lawn and garden show in one weekend makes what we get from the racetrack. Granted, we get more from the racetrack for whatever the other events are that we do there.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know if we use the grandstands for those events, do we? Or maybe we do.
Typically not.
No, so we don't use the grandstands. So, I mean, it just seems a little bit strange that an analysis was done that says, and look, I don't want to get into the hot water of the racetrack more than anybody else, but it just seems strange that we make less than a lawn and garden show for a weekend. And anything else we do that we don't use the grandstands, but we're going to pour $2.5 million in, and I'm not opposed to that, but it seems like as long as we understand what the plan is long-term
I think that's part
for
of
the
it.
grandstand.
You've got to understand that.
Yeah. And I'd be all for it. I mean, if a big soccer field's going there, or if a racetrack that is going to be a huge profit center is going to happen, and Tony can do that and turn it around, he has it. If he can do that, then this is a great idea. But I just don't understand how $2.5 million for $60,000 in revenue.
And for a track that hasn't been repaved in 6 years.
I think the conversation has got to go along when you get your results of your RFQ or P or whatever you're putting out for the racetrack, what the other ideas for it, what the result of the safety study is, what's got to all happen. But you got to put all that in the bucket and look at it together.
$2.5 million for like a bathrooms and lighting for a grandstand we only use 8 times or 9 times a year.
And we probably
and we need to change that. We need to use it more. But I just want to understand. It makes more sense to me to understand what we're going to use it for in the future. I'd rather spend this $2.5 million, or I'd rather understand it. And that's the only one that doesn't make sense to me.
Larry, sorry. Could you just take a step back? What's your impression of the grandstand, just generally?
Interesting. Keith and I have had this conversation. It is an impressive structure. Nobody sees it that way.
Huge.
But it's big. You can't spend the money anymore to build a covered grandstand or stadium. And the cantilever design, it's structurally incredibly sound.
Almost Bridgestone Arena.
So it's got a cool history. It's got cool bones. I think our goal, your goal, is to figure out how we make this a good asset. And what do we do below it? I mean, there's no question of that.
You're right. It's got a long history, not only with racing, but the
Concerts.
state fair, the concerts, fanfare.
Horse racing back in the day.
Yeah.
I guess, dovetailing into Ned's comments, did your, study envision other uses of the grandstands, for instance, a concert or whatnot, as part of those?
We listened to all that conversation. We made no assumptions about that because I think that's in part what we've got to, you've got to help focus, and what we've got to understand. We'll design and construct facilities that support the use. We've got to understand that more today.
But just to be clear, you're not recommending that we spend $2.5 million without knowing what the plan is.
No.
For the grand,
No,
for
we put
the
it in there.
racetrack,
We
the
put it
grand-
in there as a placeholder, knowing that it's a major facility
Got it.
on your campus that needs something. All the detail of that, which in many of these recommendations need to come, and I was not being so presumptuous to figure that out on our own. I mean, the guys that operate and ladies that operate this day to day, Laura coming in, has got to weigh into that.
So, I mean, if
Whether
I
it's
am-
what we do to this building,
Right.
or we do to the exterior, we've got to figure that out.
I mean, if I amended this plan, this recommendation, I'd write out to the side here, $2.5 million after you figure out what in the heck you're doing.
Well, I think it's true with all of this budget.
Right.
You know, my theory on budgets, and I've done a few capital budgets, is you got to start somewhere. It's a draft, and we will be sliding numbers all the time as we go through kind of what you need, what we want to do, how we want to accomplish it. This is a start draft budget, which is why it says that at the top of the page.
Oh, I saw fencing. So is this envision the I guess, wrought iron fencing being replaced?
We put a placeholder in and the word fencing. What that is, to what degree it is, needs conversation.
Okay.
Same
and
thing.
I know we have one of our bridges down by Browns Creek at this end is not working, and so it's a one-way street essentially. Was that looked at as well as part of this?
Yes, and again, whether we put it in year 1 or 2 or it gets replaced or eliminated, I think those are the kinds of conversations we've got to have. Remember, we were kind of starting from way up high.
Yeah.
We're wanting to get down real close right now. We got to do a little homework before we get there.
So speaking about that phase, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, you finish.
The
and then I'll-
phase, 2, 3, whatever. How will you and Keith approach that?
And you'll see that more detail, kind of in a big conceptual picture. When we did the Sobro master plan, we were kind of keen on creating 4 big ideas a year. The 5th one always being prepare for the next year, so you don't get a gap. And it's the same concept we used here. 4 big ideas for year 1, phase 1. 5th one, start preparing for the things that take a little time to prepare for. A greenway, a road realignment. Those things are going to take some engineering, permitting, and those kind of things. So start a very methodical phase. We're project managers. We do things pretty methodically and knock them out from that. But I think we kind of keep updating. This is not a one recommendation fits all. It's kind of a master budget. If we've got to tweak numbers, slide numbers, Ed does that every day, all day on every project we have currently, which are 13. And I mean, that's how the process starts. You got to start with the budget. And then what do you want to accomplish? So moving to next steps is where I'd like to go, unless there's more comment there. I struggled a little bit to say, here, we're presenting this plan this morning. By the time we get done with it, we're pretty comfortable with the concepts, understanding that you're just now hearing them, and we're going to give you a full report here in a moment. But I didn't want to see, and some of you encouraged me not to let another month go by. So my suggestion, our suggestion, is for you all to review the report and the recommendations and start to give us feedback, like you have been doing here this morning. For you to get your basic okay, to issue an RFQ for design and engineering services and an RFQ for construction management services, which are 2 key components to how we start to execute this plan. Now, Mr. Gossage's office and I, we've already pretty much drafted them. They're boilerplate. They need to go out. We need to get responses, and we'll come back with recommendations. The second thing we would really like to start to do is begin detailed meetings with you and the staff on how we spend this money. What are the most important things? In our world, that's called creating a program. Which building needs to go first? When can we take a building out of service for 6 to 9 months and gut it and redo it? Those are the kind of detailed conversations we need to have. What's important to you in terms of site improvements? Let us understand that. We'll start to put costs together. We'll estimate it. That's what we do and know how to do. So what I'd like to do is get those steps started with your blessing this morning, and then come back at the next meeting, at the September meeting, and I'll bring some recommendations and then start to frame the schedule and the capital spending. Now, I went to 50 Convention Center Authority meetings when we were doing Music City Center. About every third one, we updated the budget. We said, okay, we know this now costs this, but we got money in this bucket we want to move. And so that's, I think, our job is to help you understand how to do that. And just by way of background, my company holds a contract with Metro for large capital project management. And that's what I've spent my career doing. That's what these guys do every day. So we're really appreciative and excited about the opportunity to help you do that.
Mr. Adam,
I'm finished.
well experienced with all of this. As we look at major building, along with that goes a staging area for materials and equipment. So it's not just a building, there's an area of ground. And as we plan this and how we book events and work around that, it's going to be
hand in glove.
A task of sequencing and so.
I like in all these early conversations, almost every project has that. I remember the day I got the phone call that said, you've created a master budget for the convention center, but it appears that you're going to need to take down 25 acres of downtown, move a bunch of roads. How are you going to do that?
Well,
And I think it might have been one of Joey's colleagues that said to me that, and I simply said, we'll figure it out. There's certain things in construction and development that you just know you got to do, you just don't know how to do them. But when you start picking them apart, logically, methodically, usually you can figure out a plan and start to match that to a budget and to a schedule. And that's what we'd love to help you do. What's that?
The farmer's market kind of got blindsided a little bit by this very thing.
Yep.
And half their parking was gone, and they, and their vendors suffered. So, yeah, we want to make sure that we do this right.
Yep. So it'll take us several months to get a good designer on board, start sorting out the details, start a priority list of, we know we want to zero in on building X. That's a priority. So we'll zero on that while we're planning the other. We don't have to plan all this on day one. We just need to get a schedule going. Well, thank you all for your time. I'm sorry it took a while.
It's important.
No, thank you very much.
All right, you're more than welcome. Anything else I can do?
Thank you.
All right.
I had a question, Mr. Chairman.
And
I guess
Bonna does
between
as well.
Larry and Mr., if I could ask them, once the documents go out, what kind of turnaround where we start evaluating do y'all anticipate?
We worked with Jeff's office yesterday, and I asked Christy when your next meeting was. We think we can make that work. Wow. So go out with the solicitation. Now, bear in mind, we're going out to people that know how to do this. This is not a super design competition. We think we know who the logical group of contractors are that do construction management in the way that we typically do it. So, and they're used to interacting with us. So we think we can, hopefully, our goal, and I won't promise, but I'm going to shoot hard for, is to have you firm recommendations by next meeting. If not, a very strong schedule thereafter.
Commissioner.
Jeff? Okay. He usually doesn't stay that quiet.
I know it.
Anything else?
Commissioner.
Well, I would just suggest that we let Larry take these next steps. I think this is an impressive report. And I think we've talked the last couple of months about the new momentum that we're feeling out here. We're all excited about our new executive director. And, I think this report is sort of a tangible, it's something tangible that sort of reflects a new day at the fairgrounds, and I'm really excited about it.
Well, thank you, Bonna. And we're going to pass out these bound reports now, if that's okay.
I think
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much.
I think adding to Bonna's comments, I think we'd be remiss without publicly thanking the mayors and the mayor's office for their support on this as well. It's a nice breath of fresh air, new day out here.
No, it's been a long time coming to get this kind of capital investment, and we're thankful.
So, Commissioner, to your point, want to make a motion? Just to support the next steps recommendations?
So moved.
Wait, what are we doing? Do we need to make a motion?
I think we should, yes.
Okay.
Council's nodding her head.
We should make a
So,
motion.
yes, so we have a motion
Second.
and a second. Is there discussion
Well, I want to
on
be
the-
clear that
on these next steps?
I raise my concern. I definitely, next steps need to go forward. We want to spend this money, we want to spend it wisely. Doesn't mean that the process is going to be, we're going to look more detailed about how to spend it. But yeah, I absolutely support the next steps of the process.
So we have a next steps bullet points here, issuing the RFQs for design and engineering for construction manager, begin detailed planning meetings with staff and board, report to board, design engineering recommendations, construction manager recommendations, overall schedule. I mean, there's a lot to do, and we got to get started. So unless there's further discussion, I'd say we call a vote. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, may I be recognized? Given that you all are going to have to meet to effectuate the plans and recommendations, I would encourage you all to start thinking about dates for work sessions. Any of the meetings that you all have will have to be noticed publicly to meet the Open Meetings Act. And so you may want to come to the next meeting with some ideas about dates that work for you all so that we can make sure that we work with staff to make sure that they're publicly
Are
noticed.
we going to have some
Typically,
one-on-one meetings with them, though? We don't need to notice those, do we?
you will have to notice any meeting where there will be more than one commissioner present.
Right, but just,
Yeah.
but I thought he mentioned that he was going to try to meet with us individually.
If you meet individually, you will not have to notice those meetings. Correct.
Okay. Further business today?
Susan, we
Funnel cakes for the Vanderbilt interns?
prepared to discuss the signage today?
Just very briefly, I have reviewed some of the more recent law that has taken effect as of July 1, 2016, specifically Senate Bill 1736. And it could have some effect on the signage that has been used. I don't have a recommendation for what that signage needs to look like or when we need to put that signage up. I want to review this a little bit more, particularly in light of the fact that we're in ongoing litigation with the Goodman Gun Show concerning how gun shows are handled and guns on the property and some of the theories behind some of that. So I want to reserve an opportunity to make a recommendation to the board at a later time. But please know that I am reviewing it and I am aware of the issues as well as reviewing the current signage
That
we
new
have in
state
place.
law that I sent you,
That's correct. Thank you, Ken, for bringing that.
what I'm saying is that could have some bearing on this wordage.
It could have bearing on the wordage, correct, the wording.
And on the wordage for gun shows for 5 or 6 months?
The signage that we
Okay.
place on the this is what we had put up, and then we had the lawsuit. They were taken down. They're still not back up. Basically, if I'm paraphrasing everything right, there's still concern about the exact wordage that we need to put up, that this may not be
Correct, because
appropriate.
that wording was approved by legal, I think, 2 or 3 years ago prior to the enactment of this most recent law. And so we want to make sure that if we do put signs back up, or if we do approve for the board to put signs back up, that we are doing so in a manner that's consistent with the most current updated version of the law.
As far as the ongoing litigation, just so the record knows, right? I mean, the judge has signed the order dismissing the case. It's an interesting read. I don't know if it hasn't been out there, but one of the things it essentially says is that there's no enforcement right of action under the charter amendment. That we have held, that our hands have been so restricted. We feel like so many times there's a court order in place saying that there's really no way to enforce that. So I think that can guide some of our conversations as we go. But my understanding is that the order's been signed and entered.
Right, it has been.
I'm going to give Mr. Byrd this. I sent it to the chairperson. I'll send it to everybody else. But It's Senate Bill 1736, House Bill 2033 that we're concerned more about than the lawsuit. Actually, this is what we're, as far as the signs, much more concerned about. You're right, the case is not really the big obstacle now. It's this one. I'll go ahead and give that to you. And Susan, I can send it to the rest of them.
Okay, the only other thing I see here is color runs, and I don't think we have any real
Just to let y'all know,
updates
we
there.
did, the one that was in October was canceled pursuant to the board's decision last, what was it, May?
Right.
So we don't have any evidence one way or the other, but that's where we left it. We're erring on the side of caution. And just to let you know, at this point, we have no updates from anybody about the chemical agents they use. So erring on the side of caution, the board's motion was to, board voted rather, to not have those color runs that disperse the color agent on the runners. We did have
We
a,
permitted the one that was already set though, right? Yeah.
that one ran like
Okay.
the next 2 weeks from,
And our decision was based on the mayor's office and recommendations, correct? I mean, that, they had raised concerns about it is why it came up.
yes.
And Metro Police, Metro Fire, and the Health, and, yeah.
Wanted to point that out, that we canceled that one.
Where are we, Ken, on the October race? And were they able to modify that? They canceled it completely, okay.
Okay, any
I just have a quick-
further discussion?
Quick comment. I was going to publicly thank Scott Wallace. I know we had a week and a half ago, we had a gun show, a concert, and a race with a concert, and I was really concerned about all the traffic and on the people and everything. And we didn't hear. I don't think we heard a peep, a complaint from neighbors and everything. So it was really well done, and I just want to thank him.
Yeah, and the
And the rest
entire
of the staff that
entire
worked on it,
staff,
so.
David, everybody. Laura, you want to wave at us? Laura Schlesser starts officially next Monday,
Right.
the 15th. I guess halftime for a couple weeks as you unpack boxes and get settled. And then beginning of September, will be full-time. You'll be sitting up here with us
Told me she
at the next meeting.
She moved to Tennessee, so the first thing she did was buy a truck, which I think was
To carry all the cheese from Wisconsin.
cool. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, any further business to partake? Do we have a motion?
Motion adjourned.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, meeting is adjourned.